So I'm on a seemingly impossible mission. It's a little bold, but it is a plan to replace all 435 members of the United States House of Representatives. And while that might sound crazy or impossible, hopefully when you guys leave here in a couple hours, you're going to say, this is it. This is what you've been looking for. And there's a reason that we've had over 825,000 people from across the country to the website, that we have almost 200,000 members and watchers, and that this is a large and rapidly growing a movement all across the country. We have a chance, it's right here in front of us, to replace all 435 of these politicians that are up there. Now some of you might say, hey, there's a couple of good ones and what have you, we'll talk about that. But think about this. Do the representatives up there represent you? No. When you look at things like this, $14 trillion deficit, right? We're at 12 going to 14. Do you wonder who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
Right? I've seen some kids here. It's not going to be us, right? We're dumping this on them. And we'll go, we know about those list of grievances. We'll go through some of those. But it's time to do something different. So I quit my job, abandoned a very successful career, and I'm traveling the country to meet with folks just like you, city to city, town to town, all across America, to kind of tell you my story, why I'm here, and how we're going to do exactly what I'm suggesting we're going to do. I believe we all have a purpose in life. We're all here for a reason. Most of us never find that, I don't think. But I've learned if you watch as you go through life, there are signs along the way that will direct all of us where we're meant to go. And I'm hoping tonight some number of you are going to see a sign, just like I've seen, that's going to help you decide what you're going to do with your life moving forward. I like to start when I was a young man, 22 or 3 years old in Texas. I was in the hill country, I was hunting, I had my rifle. I guess it's all good Texan boys do. I was up on the top of this hill looking down in this valley below. I had kind of had my rifle and I'm sneaking through the woods. I'd stepped over this log, my foot was up, and I'm about to step down over this log, and right in front of me was the biggest water rattlesnake you've ever seen. Tail comes up, this monster-sized head, and then a second head. And I'm right there, and all my momentum's going forward, and everybody here, you can see what's about to happen, you can feel what's about to happen. And when you look at what's going on in our country, it's eerily similar. Right? We see that right there in front of us. We know we don't want to take that next step. You know what's going to happen if you do. What are we going to do? Now, when I think about that, I say we just can't. We can't take that next step, right? You look at this deficit, I don't know who's going to pay for it. You look at an education system that fails 30% of our kids. You look at this tax structure, right, and the money going dry and your kids leaving, and it's all over the country. Everybody is at a loss, and you say, how did it get to be so bad? Why is it like this? And I think it's because we don't have representatives. We have politicians in office, right? We have guys like John Murtha. I was down in Pittsburgh last night. They had 450 people come to this session. But guys like John Murtha, every budget that comes through, here's another $30 million to build an airport in his district that has 3 flights a day going in and out. 3, right? He's in trouble. I think he's going to get off for allegedly funneling contracts to his nephew's company. We're not surprised by that. And you guys up here, you probably know what the name of the airport is, right? The John Murtha Airport. We have guys like Arlen Specter, 5 times a U.S. Senator. Right, the political winds shift and he changes parties, and I'm always surprised the other party will take him. But did you see his quote when he changed parties? I'm not going to let the members of my district determine the fate of my political career. He really said that. And he's talking about the primary voters. We have folks like Mary Landrieu down in Louisiana. Yeah, I'll vote for health care if you give me $300 million worth of stuff. And then you have guys like Nelson over in Nebraska, who first is threatened, you will vote for this or we'll remove this military base. And you think, okay, this guy's standing up. And what does he do? He comes back and says, well, I'll vote for it if the other 49 states pay for the Medicaid expansion for our state. You know, forget that that's not fair to the other 49 states. What's in it for me? And you look at that, and you know it's wrong. You know everything about it's wrong. Why do we let it happen? Why does this persist? In 2004, right at the end of the year, my family and I moved to a little town out in the country. It was called Liberty Hill, Texas. I didn't think much about the town name at the time, but looking back, I think that was one of those signs that have led me to be right here. Right after I moved, my mother came down with cancer, went through a short battle, and lost. I was coaching a youth baseball team. One of the guys that I was coaching with committed suicide. And it was a devastating experience on the kids and everybody there, myself included. And I was just burnt out, and I said, we need to get out of town. And so I booked a little vacation a few weeks out into Florida. I said, let's just go get on the beach, kind of get away, kind of chill out for a little while. 3 days before we're about to leave, a shark attacks a surfer right off the coast of the hotel where we're going to stay. He was okay, but no swimming for the Cox family. As we're driving into town, right as we get to the edge of town, the air conditioner on the truck breaks down. So I get everybody checked in. I go to the car shop and say, hey, I need to get you fix this. He goes, no problem, we'll take care of it today. We'll get done by the end of the day. It'll only cost you $1,000. I said, great. And I said, okay, I got a day to kill while I'm here on vacation. Is there a bookstore nearby? And he goes, yeah, there's one about 3 miles up the road. Take your time. You got plenty of time to walk up there and back. So I'm walking up and I called my brother and I said, hey, what book would you recommend? And he goes, get Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Okay, that sounds like a good book. So I go in and I tell the guy, and he says, yeah, that's a great book. Come over here. And this young girl says, sir, I got a book for you. Okay, someone makes a recommendation. What do you got? So she walks me over to the government history section. And I promise I have zero interest in government and history. And she said, takes this book, hands it to me, and I kind of look at it. I kind of flip it over, and I said, nah, that's not for me. She goes, no, I want you to read this book. So I kind of look at it. It's called A Brilliant Solution. It's about James Madison and the writing of the Constitution and everything that was going on in the day. And I kind of looked it over, I gave it once, and I said, and I handed it back to her physically, and I said, thanks, but I'm going to go with the Zen book. That sounds pretty cool. And I start to walk off, and she goes, sir, I want you to read this book. So I figured she's on commission or something. I take the book, I go check out. Now I have plenty of time to read it because the next day here comes Tropical Storm Cindy blowing through right over the top of the hotel room. You can't make this up. And I sit there and I read the book, and it was a fantastic book. I mean, it was really, really good. So the next day was a beautiful day. We go fishing in the bay, and then the next day here comes Hurricane Dennis. Go back and look, right over it. Everybody has to evacuate, right over the top, the eye. No kidding, Pensacola, Florida. So everybody evacuates, we go back home. Now this was the year of the hurricane, you guys might remember. A few weeks later, here comes Hurricane Katrina, completely devastates the entire Gulf Coast. It's all fresh in everybody's mind. And 3 weeks later, here comes Hurricane Rita, the biggest Category 5 storm ever known to man, barreling down on the city of Houston. My father calls me at 6 in the morning and says, hey son, the hurricane's coming. We're going to come to Austin, get out of town. I said, sure Dad, come on up. His wife calls me at noon and says, Tim, your dad just had a heart attack. You need to come to town. So I'm driving into town. There's 2 million people are driving out. I go talk to the doctor and he just kind of shakes his head and says, son, there's not much we can do. I said, okay. And he goes, you need to get out of town. The hurricane's coming. So now I'm in line behind 4 million people. The 3-hour drive to Austin takes 24 and a half hours. I remember I got there about 2 o'clock in the morning. I turned on the TV, and you can see how the hurricane had started to turn. I went and slept for about 4 hours. I got up, turned it on again. The hurricane completely turned, kind of went right up between Texas and Louisiana. It didn't rain a drop of rain on the city of Houston. And I had to go down the next day and turn the machines off on my father. It was just that kind of year. Everything you can imagine is going wrong. And then a couple of weeks after that, if I got the timeline right, I was out, we have a little lake house, and I was out there, and I needed an electrical plug, and I had the shed over here where to keep all my spare parts and whatever. And I don't know if it relates up here, but in Texas, if you see these sheds out in the woods, you say there's probably a snake in that little shed. And I'm always as careful as you can be. You can imagine my fear of snakes. So I walked over, and I remember this time I actually picked up a log, and I threw it up against the building, making noise. I walked in, it's this little metal shack on these railroad timbers, and I kind of banged the walls, and I step in up through this door. You can see through the holes in the floor, and I have these 3 boxes with all my stuff, and I shake each box. I make as much noise as you possibly can make. And I come over to this middle box, and I start to dig around, and I just hear this ch-ch.